So Todd, it's great to have you here at Next World Forum. I really wanted to speak to you about Ghost Gaming. We've chatted for quite a while when it comes to emails, but never actually spoke to each other face to face. So I wanted to talk about the North American esports scene, the developments there. I don't get the opportunity to talk about it that much being a Brit, but how are things going with Ghost Gaming and Ghost Gaming's development?
Yeah, I can't believe it. It was Riyadh that we would first meet in face-to-face. I wouldn't have thought that. Yeah, Ghost is going great. I mean, North American esports is an interesting time right now. Clearly, the big picture is a lot of teams raised a lot of money, and their investors are now looking for more profitability than growth, I would say, which I think is healthy because it's making teams look at more sustainable business models. And so for Ghost, we acquired the team a couple years ago, and we're doing a few things, but probably what we're doing that's most unusual is really looking to impact the local community around Atlanta, Georgia, the Southeast, and then North America. I think it's kind of a underutilized approach to give back and engage with the people that are physically near you. And so what are some examples? Well, we are announcing this week a tournament in Rocket League that's a global tournament, but it's all about helping disabled gamers. So gamers that have suffered maybe spinal cord injury and are in a wheelchair. And of course, for that population, they maybe are stuck at home. It's not so easy to get out. So gaming is socialization, competition. So Ghost is supporting a local Atlanta community and a hospital that's all about adaptive gaming and helping that population. So that's maybe one of the more unusual things we're doing. We're also going to start hosting Smash tournaments for the local community, very grassroots, once a month. And then we've got some very large events coming up, including an event called Girl Gamer that Ghost is behind, which is, of course, about increasing female representation. So I hit a lot there, but they're all themed around maybe less traditional, like how does our team go and try to win a championship, and more community building and delivering impact and building just an inclusive gaming community.
I think it's really interesting when you say about focusing on Atlanta, because it's one of the few esports organizations, I'm being honest here, where it's like, I do think actually of Atlanta when I do think of Ghost Gaming. How important is it to have a community aspect, within a certain state or whether it's European country and stuff like that?
Well, my hot take is that's very important. I think most esports or CEOs or owners, they might not agree. They think that, well, gaming is global, so esports is global. I strongly disagree. I think gaming is global, but esports is regional. I think that as humans, we like to cheer for the home team where we grew up. And we see that in esports competitions when your favorite team is out, well, you start cheering for your region. You're going to be cheering for someone else from the UK, and then maybe it's EU, and same for me. If my team is out, I'm going to cheer for NA. And I think that all of us that are looking to grow participation in esports, keeping the hardcore but adding more fans, leaning into a region is a very natural way to do that because it brings in casual fans. They just want to cheer for their city or their state or their country. And particularly in the US, kids discover traditional sports through their school system. And now they're doing that for esports as well. They're starting to discover esports through their schools. Well, schools, universities, these have a physical location. They're not just in the cloud at this point. They're in Atlanta, or they're in Los Angeles, or they're in London. And so I think that I feel strongly the path to have multiple teams that are winning is to focus in particular regions, because that's just a natural way to kind of divide up the pie.
Do you think that there's a fine balance though when it comes to creating a regional brand? I mean, we've seen obvious examples of like franchises in Overwatch League and Call of Duty kind of strip brandings and specifically go Atlanta phase, for example, where it's Atlanta's like front and center in the name and the branding. Is there a fine line to not to kind of connect with the community, but also make sure that you don't alienate other people on the outside of it?
There is. So a couple of things. I mean, one, just because certain league models have been regional, that model doesn't necessarily work operationally for every game, right? So just because you maybe have a regional home doesn't mean that necessarily the competition is going to be home and away. That might not make sense for the game. And as you said, the opportunities are for these brands to be global brands, but to have the heat of the fandom come from the region. We see this with plenty of European FIFA soccer clubs that have fans all over the world. When I grew up, Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls had fans everywhere, but the fans came from Chicago first. So that, I think, is the approach that we're taking with Ghost. We want it to be a global brand, but we want it to be a voice and a fandom from Atlanta. In the same way, hip-hop music as another area of culture, a lot of the rappers, they come from Atlanta. They're strongly talking about Atlanta, but they've built a global brand. That, I think, is the opportunity for Ghost and for other esports teams.
What are some examples that you use in terms of like looking at other industries which have managed to develop local communities? Are there any examples that you kind of look to that you push onto for Ghost Gaming and that structure?
Well, I think both sports and music. So in terms of sports, as I suggested, there's a lot of great models. And one of the things when I look at, say, the Atlanta Hawks, which haven't won as much as I'd like, but they're the NBA team in Atlanta, and when I walk around, I see neighborhoods that have basketball courts that have been built and have branding by the Atlanta Hawks, and now they're training the next generation to play basketball, and of course, form fandom. So we took that model, and with Ghost, we've built out local esports and STEAM centers. We've picked a community center, a high school, a middle school. These are maybe disadvantaged areas, they are in all three of these cases, where young people wouldn't have access otherwise to a computer. I credit my whole career in technology because I was fortunate. I had a computer, and I had a dad who was a computer programmer and a role model, and I learned to go make games, but not every kid grows up with that. So if Ghost can work with other partners and deliver the equivalent of the playground basketball court or football soccer court, that is a great model from traditional sports that we can lean in with esports. In terms of music, I look at what's happened in our hometown of Atlanta with signing emerging artists that are paired with a management team that help those folks ascend in the world of hip-hop. And so similarly with Ghost, we've really leaned into our creators. We're fortunate that our managing director, Julian, has built some great orgs in the past. He had a Smite org, he was part of Luminosity. He just has an earned reputation for being amazing at lifting creators up. And so he's reached out and found people, including local Atlanta creators, and help them with their career on Twitch and on YouTube. So those are two examples from sports and from music.
As a final question, you were part of a panel on Next World Forum called the Esports Slump, talking about investments in the space and how, another term which we use, I think, is esports winter, which is commonly coined. How do you think North American esports can kind of get out of that slump from an investment standpoint? And is there a way in which you can kind of use this slump and turn it into a positive?
Well, it's a positive whenever you're focused on pragmatic growth, and I would say that's the phase that North America is in, where it had been in perhaps unrealistic, hyperbolic growth and expectation. So I don't think we're in esports winter. In the West, we're in VC winter. I mean, really what's going on is that venture capital money was very cheap and effectively free for the past 2 years. And now, because of macro environment, nothing specific to esports, there's inflation and there's high interest rates. That means money has gotten more expensive. Even if you're a big company, from 6% to now over 9%, when money is cheap, you focus on growth. When capital is harder to come by, you tend to focus on efficiency and productivity and more sustainable economic models. And that's very healthy for esports. So we're in a time of esports healing. Gaming and esports is still the single best place, in my view, that an investor could be putting their money. So we're in VC winter. Gaming and esports is a nice, comfortable, warm hoodie for the VCs to wear if they're still investing, because I'm still very optimistic in the space. And the reason why is simply every generation, a higher percentage are still playing games. If you look recently, here in Riyadh, there was Gamers 8, which was bigger than ever before, incredible prize pool. In Los Angeles, you have Valorant, 1.3 million concurrents. The Rocket League Worlds, a world record for viewership after that franchise's long history, and EVO, the fighting game tournament, also a record. So there's clearly increasing consumer demand, and that's ultimately what it's all about. Funding sometimes will be easy, sometimes will be hard, but as long as you have the attention of the consumer, that ultimately would pay off.
So would you say it's more about, like, the fan base is still there, it's just all about finding the right way to invest in the product to maximize the potential that you can get?
Yeah, I mean, esports brands are some of the few brands that have a direct relationship with fans, and fans actually care about what they have to say. I've got young kids, I've got gamers, they pretty much turn off all advertising, but they pay attention to esports brands and esports creators. That's very rare. So yeah, it is about diversifying the revenue streams, not just relying on tournament winnings and sponsorship, and ultimately that's healthy. Because as long as you've got that attention, you'll figure out a way to monetize.
So, final question from an esports standpoint then, and a competitive esports standpoint, what is the goal for Ghost? Is it continue expanding into other titles, or?
Well, it's a really good question, and candidly, we're not going to be aggressive into going to other titles. Like, I think events like this are really amazing because they're helping to disrupt the ecosystem. Because in my view, publishers need to open up and share more of the economic value with teams. I'm a little biased because back when I was at High Res Studios and we ran leagues for Smite and Paladins, we had a very favorable economic model with teams where we were sharing revenue very generously. And I think that ultimately that's what needs to happen, whether it's tournament organizers or publishers, is teams that are fielding players need to have a bigger piece of the pie. Because as everyone knows who's been paying attention to esports, you know, the traditional sports model with media rights is just not in the equation. Where does that come from? Well, it comes from direct-to-consumer digital items, but the publisher tends to get most of that, and that needs to be spread to participating teams. So I think that's the way forward, and I think that right now, it's certainly from Ghost, we're going to wait because we only move forward in a title when we have that sort of relationship with the publisher. We've enjoyed that in the past, and we'll continue to look for games that are doing that.
Perfect, Todd. It's a pleasure to finally speak to you in person, and I can't wait to speak to you again through emails, I guess. So.
Awesome. I'm glad we got to talk, Thomas. Thanks.